Yo, what's good with y'all, man? Welcome back to the channel by Sorbo Hoots. And I know y'all see the title, man. We about to be talking about John Wall and some possible trade destinations that he could be going to, being that, as most of you may know, him and the Rockets have mutually agreed that he will not be playing the rest of the season for that team. Now, on the Rockets side, it's probably to preserve his health so they be able to trade him, being that they are heading in a rebuilding route. And for John Wall, I'm pretty sure he wants to remain as healthy as possible as well, being that he just turned 31 recently and probably wants to compete for a title at some point in his career, as most NBA players do. Given John Wall's massive salary, a lot of teams just aren't in position to really trade for a person of his caliber. And on top of that, the man's is getting old. Now, he do have 2 years left on his contract, I believe, and that is a short amount of time when you really think about it in a sense of, you can put him on a good team, and he maybe can be like a Kyle Lowry-esque role for them, Chris Paul-esque role for them, because let's not forget, John Wall, when healthy, in my opinion, is a top 10 to 15 point guard in the league. Mans is an elite playmaker, athletic for his position, despite how much it may have declined given the injury. And he still has the ability to attack the basket. Solid shooter sometimes, you feel me? He is an inconsistent shooter. And he contribute on, a borderline all-star level caliber in this point in his career. But you do gotta think that a lot of teams in today's NBA have either star or superstar point guards on their team. And at the end of the day, there is a health scare with John Wall. He has been dealing with injuries a lot these past 2 or 3 years, and he isn't the same player he once was when he was in his prime in Washington. So there is a risk factor in taking on a guy who is making $40 million a year, and it isn't a guarantee that he's going to be healthy for your team or close to the player that he once was. But with that being said, though, in the scenario where we're being very hypothetical and optimistic, and let's say he is healthy for a team, I'm about to give you some teams that I think he'd be a perfect fit for and can actually help them towards either being an overall better team or even possibly contending for a championship. Now, given John Wall's play style, it is difficult to fit him on certain teams because I'm not going to put him on a team where he's the best player on that team. Obviously, at this point in his career, he's going to have to just be okay with being a third or option, being more of a passer and using his passing IQ. Probably, in my opinion, like I said, one of the greatest passers in the league right now. But yeah, man, he's going to have to be more suited in having a lower usage rate on whatever these teams I'm about to mention. And yeah, let's get into the first team, y'all. First things first, let me cover the first team that is very popular in the trade rumor mills for John Wall, and that is Philadelphia 76ers. Now, although I don't personally wholeheartedly agree that he should go to the Sixers, because in my opinion, I don't feel like it would make them much of a better team. But in hindsight, it does make sense because, for one, as I mentioned earlier, John Wall is making almost $40 million a year, with the second year being a player option, which I failed to mention earlier. But it really is realistically the only contract that can match up with the extension they gave to Ben Simmons for these next few years. So in reality, it does make sense for both teams from a contract standpoint. But if we're talking about in terms of a talent standpoint, I mean, the Rockets would be receiving Ben Simmons, who is still a young potential all-star superstar player. I haven't given up on Ben Simmons yet. Let's see if he's willing to put in that work for this game. The way he is acting in this all season towards Philadelphia, though, is turning off a lot of teams from really even wanting them on their team. But we'll talk about that in another video. But yeah, I mean, it would give another young player for Houston to be excited about, and it would give the opportunity to Ben Simmons to have his own team and, run the offense and still be a point guard for a team. And, Houston will have a lot of floor spacers around him, being that the second best player on that team would be Christian Wood, who has developed a better perimeter shot and still can work on developing it alongside Ben Simmons, etc. And as for John Wall going to Philadelphia, I mean, it won't put them in that championship contending role, but it can in a sense because, again, a healthy John Wall can be a top 10 to 15 point guard, and alongside a healthy Joel Embiid, who has had reports about being fully ready for this season, being that he's going through his rehab for his surgery. you know, a healthy Embiid is an MVP caliber player. Now, you put those two together alongside Tobias Harris, who is an all-star caliber player, and the role players they also have acquired this offseason with Drummond, and they still have Shake Milton, Tyrese. I mean, they have a solid, you feel me? They have a solid roster behind them. You feel what I'm saying? Now, John Wall still isn't that consistent of a shooter, but he is worlds better of a shooter than Ben Simmons. I mean, at least he's willing to be able to shoot. And although he isn't the passer or rebounder or defender that Ben Simmons does contribute to that team, he will provide more of a winning attitude. And on top of that, I just feel like he is a better scorer than Ben Simmons, which is what they kind of are looking for out of that guard position, someone who can create for himself and others on the team. And I do feel like John Wall will provide in that sense. Now, if we're talking about floor spacing, I mean, unless John Wall can prove that he can be a average 34-35% shooter from three and be able to efficiently hit his pull-up mid-range jumpers that he loves going off the dribble to shoot with, then it couldn't be a really good fit between him and Embiid and the rest of the players they have on that team. But if that is going to fail to be the issue, and mind you, they do have Andre Drummond coming off the bench this year for them as well. So, I mean, we'd really just have to see how it would play out. But out of all teams I'm about to mention, in terms of how contracts match up and trade value, I mean, this one just does make the most sense. So yeah, Philadelphia is the first team. The second team I had in mind for John Wall to possibly get traded to is the Los Angeles Clippers. And of all the teams that may be in the rumors and stuff like that for him to get traded to, I do believe that this is my personal favorite one. And I feel like it is a favorite in terms of he is trying to win a championship. Now, with all these super teams tacking up in Lakers and the fucking Nets, how they're stacking up their team, they're putting themselves in the best possible position to go for a title next year. And outside of those two teams, when healthy, I don't see any other team in the league really fucking with them. Now, if the Clippers want to be mentioned alongside in that conversation, I feel like an addition like John Wall, who is an all-star caliber point guard, being added to the team would definitely help the chances of them being able to compete with those two super teams. Because not only would the addition of John Wall make them a super team of their own, but it would also add another element of scoring and playmaking that they desperately need. Not only that, although I know John Wall has fell off a little bit from what he used to be, but I feel like in a good team system that is a good team defense, he can also show some signs of being a solid perimeter defender for them as well. They are one of the best three-point shooting teams in the league this past year. And also, just having another shot creator like Paul George to help him, and Kawhi when he comes back from his injury, is only going to make his job easier for him to be a suitable third option for this team and also be able to set up for other teammates on this team. Now, in a trade package like this, I do believe that they would have to probably be giving up their role players, such as probably Luke Kennard would be included in the deal, probably Zubac, probably another role player that is not just coming to mind right now. I don't know if they would have to throw Morris in the deal. I don't think they should throw him in the deal because he is a pretty solid role player for them. But if needed to get a player like John Wall, and if the contracts come down to it, I mean, shit, bro, I'd pull the trigger. Also, the Clippers making a move to get John Wall would put less pressure on Paul George to put up astronomical numbers to keep them afloat, while Kawhi is hurt, and would actually help having John Wall being a second option for a temporary time period up until Kawhi comes back for his injury. And with that being said, that's going to be the end of this video, y'all. I'm not going to lie to y'all. I was going to add the Boston Celtics as like a dark horse team that he could possibly get traded to. But to be honest, with the failures that Boston have had with their past three point guards over the years, with Isaiah Thomas, Kyrie, and Kemba Walker, I don't think adding a John Wall, who is 31 years old at this point, is a worse perimeter shooter and injury risk at the same time, and has a higher usage than the rest of those guys, would be a better fit for that Boston team, especially with Tatum and Jaylen Brown only getting better. So, yeah, that's really going to do it. I also was going to say that he probably should consider staying with Houston just so he can serve as like at least a veteran leadership for the young players on that team. But being that they drafted Jalen Green, who does require the ball in his hand for him to live up to his basketball potential as a scorer all around, they probably need the ball in his hand more, and especially with Kevin Porter Jr. being an up-and-coming star for them as well, possibly. Christian Wood as well. Hopefully he remains healthy. So yeah, it's just a difficult situation with John Wall all around. I don't really know any other team he could possibly go to because, as I said earlier in the video, a lot of NBA teams just have really good point guards on their teams already. So it's just the NBA world we live in, man. But anyways, if y'all enjoyed the video though, leave a like on the video. I know y'all see that subscription button by my name and no price tag name next to it. You feel what I'm saying? So I mean, you could just hit the subscription for free for life. You feel what I'm saying? But yeah, man, it's been Swervo Hoops talking about some hoops, man. And yeah, man, y'all be easy.